video, I'm going to talk about 3 of the 5 instructional design principles addressed in the Cambridge Handbook of Multimedia Learning by Mayer and Fiorello. These principles will help the learner focus on essential information and avoid focusing on extraneous information which causes cognitive overload. After the brief discussion of these 3 principles, there will be a short 3-slide presentation on anxiety in the classroom that demonstrates these 3 principles. I will then explain how each principle is demonstrated. The first principle is the redundancy principle. To maximize learning, aim to reduce redundancy. Redundancy occurs when the same information comes in through dual modalities, such as through the eyes and ears, or when a lesson is verbally and textually given at the same time. The information should be either read aloud or the text should be written on the screen for the students to read, but not both. Redundant information can distract the learner from important information as they try to read the text on the screen as well as it being read aloud to them. Again, to reduce the cognitive overload, please either read the text or write it down for the students to read on their own. The first slide is a good example of redundancy. The second one is bad because the text is on the screen as well as it being read at the same time. The second principle that I will discuss in this video is the signaling principle. The signaling principle helps the learner identify important information. A signal points out the important information and allows the learner to quickly locate it and focus on this information. The principle can reduce cognitive overload by reducing the search for information. Signaling can also help with the selecting phase in the processing process, which is when we select information that is important. Signaling can also help with organizing and integrating information as well. Not only can signaling be created through arrows and underlining in bold text, but it also can be created through tone of voice as well. The third and final principle that I'm going to talk about in this video is the spatial contiguity principle. This principle deals with the location of labeling, which reduces the visual search for information. Labeling should be on the same slide and close to the information, not far away. Relevant information should be close together. Take a look at the 2 pictures of the world map. The second one definitely has less visual search than the first, so the second picture best represents spatial continuity principle. All of these principles are reinforced by the cognitive load theory and the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. In the cognitive load theory, the amount of information we can process from our working memory into our long-term memory is our cognitive load. Effective instructional design, through the use of these principles, helps students recognize important information and ignore extraneous information, which allows them to use their cognitive capacity with their working memory to process important information to long-term memory. When it comes to the cognitive theory of multimedia learning, these principles all aid in effective selecting of words and pictures and then organizing them into auditory and pictorial modes that are then integrated and stored into long-term memory. Now I will demonstrate these principles in use with a short presentation on anxiety. This first slide demonstrates the redundancy principle because I've provided the learner a picture and will say something like, anxiety is prevalent in today's classroom. 25% of students experience mild to moderate anxiety and nearly 6% experience severe anxiety, meaning in a classroom of 30 students, around 7 or 8 will struggle with anxiety. Survey data shows that there's a steady increase in anxiety over the last century. This again demonstrates the redundancy principle because it provides dual modalities, a visual picture as well as audio, but it does not repeat the text and spoken words. The second slide demonstrates the signaling principle because the bolded and underlined words are important information that I want the student to take in, so it helps them to quickly locate and focus on that information. So in this case, psychological, behavioral, and physical are the important words I want them to take in. In this last slide, it demonstrates the spatial contiguity principle. This slide demonstrates this because the labels are directly with the picture, which reduces the visual search for the learner. In other words, the relevant information are close together, and this helps the learner identify the coping skills, either with the picture or the labels. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you found it useful.